Traore saw her and stopped everything. The night in Ouagadougou was colder than usual. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that settles quietly in your chest. The kind that makes the whole world feel heavier. Outside the presidential palace, a place guarded by soldiers, iron gates, and silence, there sat a little girl, barefoot, shivering, holding a small cloth bag against her chest like it was the only thing she had left in the world. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her hair was messy, her eyes were tired, but inside those eyes was a kind of determination that didn't belong to a child. A palace guard stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Little one, it's late. You should go home." The girl didn't move. She just whispered, barely audible, "I don't have a home. I only need to see President Traore." The guard froze. Children did come sometimes, to wave, to look, to smile. But never like this. Never alone. Never at midnight. He crouched down beside her, speaking gently. "Why do you need to see him?" The girl looked up, eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. After a long pause, she said, "He's the only one who will listen." The guard felt something tighten in his throat. Still, rules were rules. He looked back at the palace, then at her, unsure what to do. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. Most people would have given up. A child her age should have been sleeping, wrapped in blankets, in the safety of a home. But she stayed, silent, still, waiting. As the night grew darker, clouds gathered overhead, and rain began to fall. Light at first, then heavier until it soaked through her dress. Yet she didn't move an inch, not even to wipe the raindrops from her face. She was waiting for one man, one chance, one miracle. And then, something happened that none of the guards expected. Inside the palace, on the top floor, a light flickered on. A tall figure stepped out into the corridor, adjusting the coat on his shoulders. President Ibrahim Traoré had been working late, again. He was known for that, working when everyone else slept, fixing things others ignored, carrying the weight of a nation that tried to rise again and again, despite the odds. As he walked down the corridor, something made him stop. A flash of movement outside, a small silhouette in the rain. One of the guards quickly whispered into his radio, "Sir, there's a child outside. She has been here all night." Traoré didn't hesitate, not for a second. He stepped outside into the cold, the rain pouring onto his shoulders, his boots splashing in the puddles as he walked toward the gate. And for the first time, the little girl lifted her head. Her lips trembled, her eyes widened. She whispered, almost in disbelief, "He came." President Traoré approached slowly, gently, kneeling so he could speak to her at eye level. His voice was soft. "Little one, why are you here at this hour? What happened?" The girl's throat tightened. Her hands shook as she opened her cloth bag. Inside were 2 things, a small wooden toy soldier, and a faded photograph. Her voice cracked as she said, "It's about my father, sir. And you're the only one who can help me." The guards exchanged glances. Traoré's expression changed. Something heavy settled in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "Come, tell me everything." And right there, in the rain, under a dim streetlight, the most unexpected, heartbreaking story of the year was about to begin. The rain softened as Traoré gently guided the little girl under a nearby canopy. He took off his own coat, heavy, warm, and lined for the night cold, and placed it around her shoulders. It nearly swallowed her tiny frame, but for the first time that night, she stopped shivering. Traoré sat beside her on a stone bench, ignoring the water dripping from his hair and uniform. The guards kept their distance, understanding instinctively that this moment was not for them. This was a moment between a child and a man who carried a nation. The girl speaks. Traoré's voice was calm, warm, patient. "Tell me about your father. Start from the beginning." The girl clutched the faded photograph with trembling fingers. The rain had blurred the edges, but the face was still clear. A young soldier, smiling proudly in his uniform, holding a tiny baby, She took a deep breath. My father's name was Yarrow. He was a soldier just like you, sir. Traore's eyes softened. He remembered almost every fallen soldier by name, every family he had visited, every funeral he had attended quietly, without cameras, without speeches. But Yarrow, he whispered the name under his breath. I knew him. The little girl's voice cracked. He told me, if anything ever happened to him, I must give this to you. She slowly took out the second item in the cloth bag. A small wooden toy soldier. Old, scratched, and hand-carved, but held with so much love that the wood had become smooth. Traore gently took the toy into his hands. The moment he touched it, something shifted in his expression. Recognition, memory, pain. Flashback, a promise made long ago. Lightning flashed, illuminating Traore's face. He whispered, I remember this toy. His voice drifted into memory. Years ago, long before he became president, long before the world spoke his name, he had fought alongside Yarrow, a young soldier with a bright laugh, a man who could lift the spirits of an entire camp just by walking into the room, a man who carried that wooden toy everywhere, calling it his lucky charm. One night, Yarrow had sat beside Traore at the edge of a campfire. He held the toy soldier in his hands and said, if anything ever happens to me, promise me you'll look after my daughter. She'll need someone strong. Traore had laughed. Nothing will happen to you, Yarrow. But Yarrow didn't laugh. He stared into the flames and whispered, just promise me. Traore placed his hand on Yarrow's shoulder. I promise. And then, as memories do, the moment dissolved into the night. Back to the present, the truth revealed. Traore looked at the girl with eyes full of grief and regret. Little one, why didn't anyone bring you to me earlier? Where is your mother? Her gaze dropped instantly, and Traore knew. He had seen that look too many times. The look of a child who had seen too much pain. Her voice was barely a whisper. My mother passed away last year. A silence heavier than the rain fell between them. She continued, since then, people wanted to take our house. They said without my father, we don't deserve it. Her small face tightened. They took everything. I had nowhere to go. Traore clenched his jaw, the kind of anger that didn't explode, but burned quietly, deeply, like fire behind steel. He asked softly, and why did you come to me alone? The girl wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Because my father told me you always keep your promises. A lump formed in Traore's throat. This wasn't politics. This wasn't duty. This wasn't leadership. This was personal, deeply personal. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. You are safe now. You hear me? She nodded. From this moment, you are not alone anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, not fear anymore, but relief. For the first time in months, she felt protected. But then, the twist. The girl hesitated. She reached deeper into her cloth bag. A third item. A folded, rain-stained letter. Her father's handwriting. She handed it to Traore with shaking fingers. He said this was for your eyes only. Traore carefully unfolded it. His eyes moved across the page. His expression changed. Shock. Then disbelief, then something darker, something heavy, something dangerous. He looked back at the girl. Did anyone else see this letter? She shook her head. No, I kept it hidden. Traore stood. His voice was low, controlled, but tense. Little one, your father didn't just leave you a message. He looked toward the palace, his eyes sharpening. He left us a warning. The night air felt heavier now, not because of the rain, but because of what lay inside that fragile, water-stained letter. Traore held it between his fingers, carefully, almost reverently, as if he were holding the final heartbeat of a man he once called brother. The girl watched him anxiously, her small hands gripping the oversized coat he had wrapped around her. Sir, is something wrong? Traore didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. The words on the page were still sinking in, bleeding into him like ink spreading through water. Finally, he took a slow breath and read the first lines aloud. "If you are reading this, Ibrahim, it means I never made it home." The girl flinched, even though she already knew he was gone. Hearing it in her father's voice felt like being stabbed again. Traore knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder before continuing. "They told us we were protecting the people. Instead, we were protecting a lie." Lightning flashed, illuminating Traore's face. Hard, focused, grim. He read the next part silently at first. His eyes darkened. Then he whispered it. "There is a betrayal inside the army. A man in uniform, taking money from outsiders." The girl blinked through tears. "Betrayal? Who? Why?" But Traore kept reading. His voice dropped lower. "I discovered documents, names, routes, payments. I hid everything in a place only you would look. The old barracks under the broken map on the west wall." A chill ran through Traore's spine. He knew that room. He and Yarrow had trained there together as boys. The broken map of the northern borders still hung crooked on the wall, a joke between soldiers for years. But now it held a secret, a deadly secret. Yarrow's final secret. The final lines, the words that broke him. Traore's voice trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from grief. "My daughter is all I leave behind. Don't let her be swallowed by the same darkness that took me. If you can't save me, save her." The girl covered her face, finally breaking into full sobs. Traore pulled her close, gently, protectively, shielding her like a father shields his own child. Her tears soaked into his uniform. His hand rested on the back of her head, steady and warm. He whispered, "Your father didn't die for nothing. I swear to you, I will finish what he started." But the letter wasn't over. A final line, written hastily, as if Yarrow had been running, hiding, desperate. Traore swallowed as he read it. "Trust no one in the upper ranks. One of them wants you dead." The world seemed to stop. The girl looked up, eyes wide with fear. "Someone wants to kill you?" Traore didn't flinch. He folded the letter carefully, tucking it close to his chest. His voice was steady, a quiet storm. "Little one, if they wanted fear, they chose the wrong man." He stood tall, rain dripping from his jawline, the city lights reflecting in his stern eyes. This wasn't just a warning. This was a declaration, a message from a fallen soldier, and a challenge from an unseen enemy. Then suddenly, a shadow moved at the far end of the courtyard. A guard rushed forward. "Captain, we found something. You need to see this now." Traore's grip tightened on the girl's hand. He whispered, "Stay close. You're with me now." He turned toward the darkness, toward the truth, toward the storm waiting ahead. The old military barracks stood at the edge of the compound like a wounded memory, abandoned, cracked, and half swallowed by vines. A place forgotten by everyone. Everyone except two men, Traore and the friend he lost. Lightning split the sky as Traore pushed the rusted door open. The hinges screamed like a ghost trying to warn him. The little girl clung to his coat. "Is this where my papa used to train?" Traore nodded quietly. He became a warrior in this room. But the room did not feel heroic tonight. Felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Two soldiers followed behind with lanterns, but Traore raised a hand. No lights. He didn't want electricity. He needed shadows because he knew Yarrow. And Yarrow hid things where only a soldier's instincts would look. The soldiers obeyed, stepping back. Only Traore and the little girl remained inside the darkness. Rain drummed on the tin roof like distant gunfire. The broken map. Traore walked to the west wall, where the giant, dust-covered border map still hung. Crooked, torn, and faded. The girl whispered, "Will we find what he left?" Traore ran his fingers along the edges of the map. He knew this wall. He had leaned on it during his first day of training. He had slept against it on nights too cold to forget. And now, it was about to reveal the last truth of a man he loved like a brother. He pressed lightly. Something shifted. A hollow sound. His heartbeat picked up. There was a space behind the wall. With one sharp pull, he tore the map from the nails. Dust exploded into the air like memories trying to escape. Behind it, a cracked piece of plywood, slightly lifted at the corner. Traore slid his fingers underneath, lifting it slowly. The girl held her breath. Under the board lay a small, dirt-covered metal box. Old, rusty, locked. Traore exhaled through his nose. This is it. He carried it to a table and forced the lock with the end of his knife. The box clicked open. Inside were several folded documents, a USB drive, 2 photographs, and a small cloth patch from Yarrow's uniform. The girl picked up the patch gently, pressing it to her chest. Traore unfolded the first document. His jaw tightened. The explosive truth. The papers showed !secret bank transfers, !foreign company signatures, !supply routes for stolen gold, !names of officers connected to illegal deals, and one name circled in red ink. Repeatedly. Traore stared at it. The girl looked at the page, confused. Who is that? Traore's voice dropped lower than a whisper. Someone who smiles in my face. Someone sitting high in the chain of command. Outside, thunder exploded. The truth was no longer just dangerous. It was lethal. He opened another document. This one made his blood run cold. It wasn't about corruption. It was a message, a direct threat. Remove Traore before reforms begin. Accident planned. Northern inspection route. The girl gasped. They wanted to kill you? Just like my papa? Traore didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the second photograph in the box. A photo taken secretly. A blurry image of 2 men shaking hands over crates marked with foreign logos. One of those men was Yarrow, alive, serious, watching from the shadows. The other man, Traore knew that face. Everyone in the country knew that face. A high-ranking officer. Celebrated. Praised. Trusted. This discovery could shatter the entire military structure. Traore placed the photograph down slowly. No fear. Just silent fury. Then, footsteps. Someone was running toward the barracks. A soldier burst through the door, panting. Captain, we have a situation. He froze when he saw the documents on the table. His eyes widened. Traore straightened. Speak. The soldier swallowed hard. Sir. Someone else was here before us. What do you mean? The soldier pointed to the floor near the far wall. Traore walked over with the lantern. The dirt was disturbed. Footprints. Fresh. Leading to the back exit. Someone had been in the barracks. Someone who knew about the box. Someone who fled the moment Traore arrived. The girl tightened her grip on his sleeve. Do they know we found the truth? Traore knelt, inspecting the footprints. His voice was calm. Too calm. They know. He stood up slowly. A storm outside. A storm inside the army. A storm rising in his eyes. He picked up the documents, the USB drive, the photographs, and the little girl's trembling hand. This is no longer about your father. It's about saving this entire nation. He turned toward the door. Rain pounded harder. Thunder rolled above. War was not coming. It had already begun. The sun had barely risen, but the tension in the room was heavier than any storm. Papers lay scattered on the table, a trail of secrets and lies that someone had hoped would remain hidden forever. Ibrahim Traoré stood silently, his gaze sharp, scanning every corner, every shadow. He had seen treachery before, but this was deeper than anything he had imagined. The whispers of betrayal echoed through the walls. Friends who once smiled now hid daggers in their hearts. And somewhere in the darkness, the man responsible for this carefully plotted deception waited, thinking he was untouchable. But Traoré was no ordinary leader. Every act of cunning, every hidden agenda, only fueled his resolve. He would uncover the truth, expose the lies, and confront the one who dared to threaten the nation he had sworn to protect. As the room held its breath, the first pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Alliances would shatter. Secrets would be revealed. And when the dust settled, Only one question remained. Who is the man behind the betrayal? And can he be stopped before it's too late? The nation watches, hearts pounding, as Ibrahim Traoré steps closer to the truth. The rain poured relentlessly, turning the streets into rivers of light and shadow. Traoré's coat clung to his frame as he walked through the storm, each step measured, deliberate. The city around him was alive with whispers, rumors of betrayal that had shaken its very core. But tonight, there would be no whispers. Tonight, the truth would stand face to face with the one who had betrayed them all. He arrived at the office, its windows glowing dimly against the storm. Inside, the betrayer waited, calm, almost arrogant, as if expecting Traoré's arrival. The room was silent except for the rhythmic tick of a clock and the occasional drip of water from a leaking gutter outside. Traoré paused, drawing a deep breath, his mind replaying the series of lies, the hidden agendas, the nights when trust had turned to dust in his hands. Every memory fueled the fire in his chest, but Traoré did not allow anger to consume him. He had learned long ago that true power was measured not in revenge, but in justice. The door creaked open, and the betrayer turned, a slow, calculated smile spreading across his face. "I knew you'd come," he said, voice dripping with false calm. "But do you really think you can stop what's already in motion?" Traoré stepped forward, his gaze unwavering, his voice steady despite the storm raging outside. "I'm not here for revenge," he said, each word deliberate, each syllable sharp as a blade. "I'm here for justice. The people deserve the truth, and they deserve to know who you really are." A harsh laugh escaped the betrayer, echoing against the walls like a sinister melody. "Justice?" he sneered. "You think rules matter? You think honor matters in a world where power decides everything?" Traoré's eyes burned with intensity. "Rules are what separate a leader from a tyrant, and I will never cross that line." There was no hesitation in his voice, no tremor of doubt. He was not a man swayed by fear or temptation. He was a man guided by conviction, by a sense of responsibility that transcended his own life. The tension in the room was suffocating. Outside, thunder roared, and lightning flashed, illuminating the betrayed papers scattered across the floor. Traoré's hands moved with quiet precision, gathering evidence, documents, and photographs that exposed every deceit, every stolen fund, every broken promise. He held them high, letting the faint light fall upon the truth, undeniable and cold. "This ends now," he said simply. "The people will see. They will know who you are." The betrayer's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. You don't understand. You can't just—" But Traoré interrupted, his voice unwavering, cutting through the tension like a blade. "I understand perfectly. I understand that your choices have consequences. And today, those consequences begin." There was no dramatic fight, no shouting or physical struggle. The confrontation was mental, moral, and emotional. Traoré's strength was in his restraint, in his ability to rise above the petty desires of vengeance. He allowed the law and the truth to act as his instruments, and in that room, power was no longer a shadow, no longer something hidden behind lies. It was embodied in integrity, in courage, in the unyielding pursuit of what was right. The betrayer tried to maintain composure, but the walls of deception he had built around himself were crumbling. Traoré's presence, unwavering and resolute, exposed the cracks, and the betrayer's voice wavered. The documents in Traoré's hands were more than paper. They were proof, a mirror reflecting every act of treachery in stark reality. For the first time, the betrayer felt the weight of accountability, the realization that no amount of manipulation or charm could shield him from the truth. As the room grew colder with the advancing storm, Traoré remained calm, letting the weight of justice settle. He did not need to shout, did not need to threaten. The truth itself carried power. And in that moment, the betrayer understood that everything he had built on lies would crumble, and no denial could save him. The storm outside slowly began to subside, as if the city itself was holding its breath, witnessing the end of a long chapter. Traoré watched the betrayer being taken away, his face a mixture of fear and defeat, finally acknowledging the consequences of his actions. And yet, in that final moment, Traore did not rejoice. There was no celebration, only quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from doing what is right, even when the world offers easy paths to anger and revenge. He stepped outside into the soaked streets. The rain had softened, the puddles reflecting the first faint light of dawn. The city was beginning to stir, unaware that it had been spared further corruption. Traore's eyes scanned the horizon. Though the fight had ended, he knew that leadership was not about moments of triumph. It was about the countless choices, every day, to stand for truth, for justice, and for the people who trusted him. A sense of calm settled over him. The betrayal had been confronted. Justice had been served. And though the scars of deception remained, the city, and those who had been wronged, could finally begin to heal. Traore walked forward, unshaken, not as a man seeking glory, but as a leader who had carried the weight of responsibility and had done what was right, even when it demanded the greatest courage. In the quiet that followed, there was a lesson for all who would hear it. True strength is not in power, wealth, or fear, but in the unwavering commitment to truth, even when the storm rages around you. And Traore, standing alone in the soft dawn, had proven that such strength could change the course of lives, restore hope, and leave a legacy that no betrayal could ever erase. And so, even in the face of betrayal, one man's courage proved that truth and integrity will always outlast lies and deception. Or, if you want something more personal and cinematic, Traore had faced the storm, unshaken, and in the quiet that followed, he knew the city and its people were safe, for as long as there were those willing to stand for what was right.